Hi, Lakeview. It feels like forever since I saw you last. What's been going on? Maybe you've started camping or had a stick stuck up your nose or had to quarantine. Our gardens have grown. T-Swift put out a new album. Life is strange, but it carries on. Welcome to August's Spiritual Formation Practice video. This summer, we've explored some of the baseline practices of the spiritual life, like Bible reading and prayer. And today we're continuing with that exploration with the practice of generosity. This has been such a good practice for me to think about through the last few days. In fact, I feel like it might be a practice that could help save us right now, because it has the potential to take something that feels lifeless and stuck and generate new energy. And we really need that right now. Let me tell you about it. A couple of lifetimes ago, when I took a class in grad school, I learned a brand new word: generativity. Sounds a little bit like generosity, doesn't it? Generativity, in its simplest definition, means to take something that is already there and combine it with something else that is already there, and by combining them, to produce something that is more than the sum of its parts. This combination produces something new. New energy, a new idea, a new direction, a new life. So, for instance, if I take a windmill and some wind and put them together in the right way, I can create energy. I can light and heat houses. I put gas in an engine and I can create momentum. I put peanut butter and chocolate together and I have the Reese's Peanut Butter Cup. You can apply this to human relationships too. If I say hi to someone new and maybe invite them over, bam, we have a new friendship. Or in the ultimate act of generativity, a sperm and an egg meet, and there's a baby. Of course, it's not quite that easy. Any parent knows that while making a baby might be easy and fun, making a human is a lot harder. It requires someone to offer the very space of their own body to grow that little human, and then shift their whole life around once that little human is born in order to raise them. Creating a human is a beautiful, generative act, but it also requires generosity. It is the offering of your body, your life, for the sake of another. And the potential of that generosity is endless. Generosity is generative energy. The first thing we need to know about generosity is that generosity is taking what we have and offering it. It is the act of imparting who we are, what we have, to something or someone else. It doesn't have anything to do with how much we have, but just with offering what we have with hope, faith, and love. It's a posture of our heart, not a way to balance how much we have coming in and how much we have going out. Generosity is the antidote to seeing others as rivals rather than as fellow humans. It is the antidote to a scarcity mentality, the antidote to lonely independence. It's a practice that calls out and stands against the cultural norm that we are what we have, we are how hard we work, or that our worth is determined by whether we can keep up. Here's what I've noticed about my own heart and mind through COVID. I often feel stuck and tired and alone. I get fearful, and then my temptation is to hole up, to hoard my resources and preserve my energy and time. It can feel like there's not enough to go around, so how can I share what I have? I feel like I barely have enough for myself. But what if instead I were generous? Generous with my attention as I move through life, generous with my words and energy and resources. I wonder if something would shake loose in me and something generative might happen. A new kind of energy or life might come. There's a great story in the scriptures about generosity. Listen to this. When Jesus got the news, he slipped away by boat to an out-of-the-way place by himself, but unsuccessfully, because someone saw him and the word got around. Soon, a lot of people from the nearby villages walked around the lake to where he was, and when he saw them coming, he was overcome with pity and healed their sick. Toward the evening, the disciples approached him. "We're out in the country and it's getting late. Dismiss the people so that they can go to their villages and get some supper." But Jesus said, "There's no need to dismiss them. You give them supper." "But all we have are 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish," they said. Jesus said, "Bring them here." And then he had the people sit on the grass. He took the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, lifted his face to heaven in prayer, blessed, broke, and gave the bread to the disciples. The disciples then gave the food to the congregation, and they all ate their fill. And afterward, they gathered 12 baskets of leftovers, and about 5,000 people were fed. Do you see what happens when the disciples give over to Jesus what they have? It's not enough, but somehow that act of generosity generates more. Everyone gets what they need, and there are even leftovers. In another version of this story, a boy offers the 5 loaves and the 2 fishes, and we often talk about his act of generosity. But in this version, I am struck by the generosity of Jesus. You'll notice that the story starts with this: when Jesus got the news. The news that he got was this: his good friend and cousin, John the Baptist, had just been beheaded, and he's going to this out-of-the-way place to grieve. But instead, someone spots him and asks for more of his time and energy, and even though I'm sure Jesus didn't have much left, Jesus gives more. He's generous. This is a beautiful story of the mutuality, the interdependence that comes with generosity. Jesus is spent, and yet he gives himself to the crowd anyway. And then the 5 loaves and 2 fish are given to the disciples by the crowd, and then they give it back to the crowd. And in the end, there is enough for everyone. Of course, we are called to follow the way of Jesus, and so we need to work on having that same posture of generosity. But this story tugs at my heart because it reminds me that this is also the kind of generosity that I need in my life. And you know what? I have it, and you do too, because this world exists because of the generosity of God. The world was created out of the overflow, the generous overflow of God's love. It is God's generous and attentive love that keeps the world on its axis and sustains us. This is what Richard Rohr says: "I think grace, arising from God's limitless love, is the central theme of the entire Bible. It is the divine, unmerited generosity that is everywhere available, totally given, usually undetected as such, and often even undesired." Here's the irony of experiencing God's generosity. While it's always there, accessing it often requires us stepping into the risky space of being generous ourselves without knowing how it's going to turn out. The boy who offered the fish and loaves had to give them up. I think I probably would have hidden them behind my back so that I could feed myself and my family. Here's what Proverbs says about the irony of generosity. The world of the generous gets larger and larger. The world of the stingy gets smaller and smaller. The one who blesses others is abundantly blessed, and those who help others are helped. To experience the new life that generosity can bring, we have to surrender what we have. So here's how you might start doing it. Your weekly practices for the month of August. Week 1, be generous in your assumptions about other people. Brene Brown talks about this beautifully in her book, Rising Strong, which I generously lent to someone and can't remember who. Instead of assuming the worst about others, this week we're going to assume the best. When our partner is short with us, when our kid makes a mistake, when someone cuts in front of us in traffic, we're going to remember that we all have bad days and that we also are short with people and make mistakes and cut in front of people sometimes, and we need people to make generous assumptions about us. You see, generosity is rooted in humility, a recognition that we are all human and doing the best we can and often missing the mark. I have learned this with driving the hard way. A few years ago, I had so many driving demerits, I had to go to remedial driving school and take one-on-one driving lessons again. Just like when I was 16, it was humiliating. Now, I wasn't a particularly bad driver, even my personal driving teacher said so, but I was a single mom with 4 little kids, and I was often super distracted when I was driving. I was late and in a hurry or thinking about something else, and I needed to make some changes. So I've pulled up my socks, and now I have extra points, but that humiliation comes back to me when someone cuts me off in traffic, because maybe they are a single mom with 4 little kids, or they just had a big fight, or someone they love is in trouble. My own experience of being human has helped me be generous with other people. So week 1, be generous in your assumptions. Week 2, be generous with your time. Some of us hoard our energy like other people hoard money or food or stuff. I can be like this. I feel like I have to manage my energy stores, and I don't want to share my time when things feel overwhelming. But I've found when I protect my energy and time, my insides become like an episode of Hoarders. Things feel cluttered and scattered and stuck, and there's nowhere to even turn around. And while I just want to shut the door and not let anyone in, the solution is to start spending some of the time and see how it clears out my insides and makes me freer. Some of us have no time. We have little kids and a job and housework and more demands than we can handle. We can give time by just taking a hot minute when our kids ask for our attention or our partner is telling us something. Give your time by focusing your attention. Some of us have more time than we need, so we might consider volunteering or inviting people to share our time, making new friends, or engaging in community activities, or helping where help is needed. Week 3, be generous with your resources. You might have a lot, you might just have a little bit. Be generous with what you have. You might this week want to ponder this story of Jesus in Luke. Just then he looked up and saw the rich people dropping offerings in the collection plate. And then he saw a poor widow put in 2 pennies, and he said this: "The plain truth is that this widow has given by far the largest offering today. All these others made offerings that they'll never miss, but she gave extravagantly what she couldn't afford. She gave her all." You don't have to have enough to give. Extravagant giving has nothing to do with the amount. It has to do with the posture of our hearts. So give something you have to someone who needs it, or commit to giving financially to something you really care about. It might be a charity, a cause, or a church. Week 4, be generous with your words. Be intentional about telling the people you love that you love them and why. When you see someone do something you admire, tell them. When you think a nice thought about someone, share it. Say thank you. Say sorry. Say I forgive you. Use your words to create new spaces where new life can grow. So, week 1, be generous with your assumptions. Week 2, be generous with your time. Week 3, be generous with your resources. And week 4, be generous with your words. And if you're super brave, you can even pepper that word generativity into your conversation. You'll sound super smart. There's your mission for the month. Off you go, friends. Let's see what Jesus can do with our loaves and fish.